Good morning. Welcome to Cornerstone. Happy New Year. Please stand and join us.
One thing we ask of you, one thing that we desire, that as we worship you, Lord, come and change our lives. Arise, 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 take your place, be enthroned on our praise. Arise, King of Kings, Holy God, as we sing, One thing we ask of you, one thing that we desire, that as we worship you, Lord, come and change our lives. Arise, 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 take your place, be enthroned on our praise. Arise, King of Kings, Holy God, as we sing, Arise, 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 take your place, be enthroned on our praise. Arise, King of Kings, Holy God, as we sing, arise.
Amen. Well, we are glad that you're.
I have a special guest to introduce to you, and he has been a friend to me since 2008. He is a missionary. His name is Pastor Ian Acebo. The first time I met him was in the Philippines. It was 2008, and Ian had freshly committed his life to the Lord Jesus Christ, and he was serving in his church any way that he knew how. He was cleaning the floors, sweeping, doing whatever he could. He was a church worker. The next time I went back was 2010, and at that point, Ian was beginning to develop in his ministry and do some teaching and those types of things. When I went back in 2012, we planted a church, and Ian became the pastor there over the last couple of years. And now he has the opportunity to be here in America, and he is training to be a missionary and church planter. So God is radically transforming this young man's life. He is a close friend of mine. It's been really fun to be able to see him over the Christmas break. He's going to just take a few minutes and speak to you about his ministry and minister to us through some music. So, Pastor Ian, would you come and share with us?
Good morning. I want to thank you all for having me here in your church. And this Christmas break, I've been so blessed for your church here and many people. And thank you, Pastor John. They accommodating me in their house, even though I share some cold to them. I've been sick, but I thank the Lord for all the blessings and amazing experience that I experienced here. And I want to share a little bit before I sing. I'm now, that's what Pastor John said. But actually, I got saved 2003 in the Philippines under the ministry of Pastor Ogie Abalin, the missionary that you've been helping in the Philippines. And I want to thank you all for being a partner of our ministry there. And I can say that I'm one of the fruit of your sacrifices and labor of love to the Lord. And 2005, I surrendered my life to the Lord as a full-time worker in the church after I graduated in my high school. And then I've been trained that in the church. I sleep in the church. I stay in the church. I left my family. And 2008, when Pastor John came in our place, I got there's one friend, his name is Danny, that helped me to enter in the Bible school. So that time, I'm thankful to the Lord, and I started to study at the Bible college. And in 4 years, since first year to fourth year, I was trained. I was equipped by God in that Bible college. And then 2012, I graduated, and God gave me another task to become a pastor. And I was commissioned by my sending church and pastor in one of our village church in the Philippines. It's Barangay Alicabok. So I already pastoring that church in 2 years. But another task that was given to me by God is to become a missionary. So 2014, He gave me a big opportunity to be here in America. It's not just very easy. Before, it's like a dream for me. To be here, it's so expensive. So it needs a lot of money. But I thank God. I took the opportunity. I know that God has another plan for me. And I took that chance, and I'm really thankful to the Lord because He provided my needs in many ways. And now I'm here in front of you. I came here last 2014 September, and I've been here for a year. And now last August 2015, I started my deputation. I'm calling some churches. I went to some churches here in America. It's kind of hard in driving here. It's different in our place. Driving for many miles, many hours, it's hard. But I'm doing it for the Lord. And I know God is always with me. And I'm praying for 40 individuals and churches that be my partners in the ministry that can support me $50 a month. And I am praising the Lord. I have already 2 churches that's already supported me. And my desire is to after my training here, I want to go back in our ministry there in the Philippines, in the area of Pastor Ogie, and to help him in our ministry there until we reach our goal for 10 churches for the year 2020. And I have another desire to move out from that area and start in another province. It's a church planting method. That's what we're aiming in our college now. And I appreciate your praying for me and your encouraging word. And I'm so glad I'm here again. And I saw your big smile. And I've been so blessed in the ministry here in Church of Clarion. And now I'm going to sing. It's entitled, Thank You for Giving to the Lord. Whatever things that we do for the Lord, little things, big things, I know someday in heaven we will see our reward. dream I went to heaven. You were there with me. We walk upon the streets of gold beside a crystal sea. We've heard the angels singing, then someone called your name. You turned and saw this young man, and he was smiling as he came. And he said, friends, you may not know me now. Then he said, but wait, you used to teach my Sunday school when I was only 8. And every week you would say a prayer before the class would start. And one day when you said that prayer, I asked Jesus in my heart. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am a life that was changed. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am so glad you gave. Then another man stood before you. He said, remember the time a missionary came to your church and his pictures made you cry. You didn't have much money, but you gave it anyway. Jesus took the gift you gave, and that's why I'm here today. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am a life that was changed. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am so glad you gave. One by one they came, far as the eye could see. Each light somehow touched by your generosity. Little things that you have done, sacrifices made, unnoticed on the earth, but in heaven now proclaim. I know up in heaven you're not supposed to cry, but I am almost sure there were tears in your eyes as Jesus took your hands and stood before the Lord. He said, my child, look around you, for great is your reward. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am a life that was changed. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am so glad you gave. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am a life that was changed. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am so glad you gave. I am so glad you gave. Preacher.
Thank you, Pastor Ian. Isn't it great to see the fruit of the missions that we support, Cornerstone? I just love that. And, honestly, Pastor Ian is just one of many pastors that has come out of that ministry. Pastor Ogie did a parachute drop out there knowing no one, established a church in 2003, and now he has several pastors to show for it. He's got Pastor Arnold and Pastor Jess, Pastor Rickson, Pastor Mike, Pastor Mulo, Pastor Alex. Yeah, all just like Ian, being saved in a place where the gospel was not preached. Now having been reached with the gospel, they are filled with passion for the Lord, pastoring churches themselves. It is exciting to see what is going out there. On your way out, you'll see that Pastor Ian has a little display in the back, and there's a little green bowl on his table, and I put that there. All right? And we want to put something green in that bowl and say, thank you, Pastor Ian. We love you and appreciate you. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and send him back. He's headed back to his college today. It has been a pleasure to have him here with us. Thank you for sharing with us, Pastor Ian. Well, this morning we are beginning a new series in the book of Exodus. So if you would turn in your Bibles, we are going to begin our series, A Journey Through the Promised Land. And as you're turning there, I want to take you through a little bit of a journey here myself, because Exodus was not written to be a book independent all by itself. It is more like a chapter in the Pentateuch, and the Pentateuch is the first 5 books of the Bible. And it has its place fitting after the book of Genesis, after creation. And I want to just kind of run you through that. And we go all the way through to Deuteronomy, where we have all the tribes of Israel poised at the border of the Promised Land, the land of Canaan, to take their land that the Lord has promised to them. So this particular portion of that journey, Exodus, talks about the deliverance that God gives them from the bondage of Egypt, and it has a key role all throughout the Bible. So it's a book we want to understand well. It is filled with exciting stories. It's a fascinating book, and certainly carries a strong theme of our deliverance with it. So to understand well the book of Exodus will bless us as followers of Christ. Let me back up, and I'm going to sprint through Genesis, okay, just so we catch up to where we need to be this morning. God established at creation a covenant with man, a relationship with mankind. So in the Garden of Eden, he had Adam and Eve, and he had established a covenant with them, a relationship with them. He walked with them. He had a presence and an intimate relationship with them, and he spoke of one rule in the garden that they chose to obey, and that was that they would not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And we know the story. That happened, and they rebelled against God in that way, and the curse was that if you did that, you would surely die. Both physically and spiritually, you would be cut off from the relationship with the Lord. Now, God immediately extended grace and mercy in that when they ate of the fruit, they did not drop dead. In fact, what we saw was the Lord came running in, and he confronted them on the breach of their covenant. But he continued to stay with them. He continued to provide for them. In fact, he slew an animal and he dressed them in its skin to cover their shame. So God stayed with them even though they broke the covenant, and immediately he began to work through the process and plan of redemption right as soon as this took place. Now, we know that they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and their bodies did begin to die, and that is part of the life as we know it now. It's appointed unto man once to die, and then the judgment. There's no getting out of that. That's part of the curse. Death has been introduced to God's creation and mankind. So what happened at that point is all the descendants of Adam and Eve were God's people. Okay, so he gave them the command to be fruitful and multiply, and you're going to need to know that for our story today. But he gave them that command, and they began to grow and be fruitful, and the problem became, as we know, they became so evil that God actually relented, he repented, he regretted the day that he made man, because it was so evil, it was such a stain on the earth. So what he did is he started over. He judged the earth with a flood. He had Noah build the ark and invited people to get on. Everybody rebelled against him except Noah and his family. So then God kind of took a sample of the global gene pool, put it on the ark, and started over. And again, he had a people for himself. He made a covenant with Noah, and to his sons he said, "Be fruitful and multiply, cover the earth." So this happened again. And the same thing happened. Mankind got so evil that God had to do something about it. And that all culminated at the Tower of Babel. Instead of being fruitful, multiplying, covering the face of the earth, mankind had come together and they had formed their own government, and they were doing things that were against the will of the Lord here. And we could go into that in detail, but that's a story for another day. And God judged them in a completely different way because He promised He would not flood the earth again and kill all of mankind. So what He did this time was extremely unique. He disinherited the nations. What does that mean? That means that before the Tower of Babel, the people on the world were the people of the Lord. They were His people. He had a covenant with them through Abraham and his children. But they became so evil, basically what He did, and this is from Deuteronomy, it said that the Lord divided the nations. He gave to the nations their inheritance, and He divided them up according to the sons of God. And that's a topic for another day. But what you need to understand is that God took the people, divided them up, gave them different languages, and said, now go spread out and go serve gods that suit you, since you have rejected me. And He disinherited the people of the earth. These are no longer my people. They do not belong to me. They can go serve other gods according to their desires. And that is a terrible judgment that happened at the Tower of Babel. God stepped away from His people, but not for long. It was very soon after that He came to one man named Abram, and He said, I am going to make my nation out of you, and I will make a covenant with you. And out of your seed and your descendants and our relationship together, we will reach the other nations that I have disinherited, and they will want to come back to me by their choice. They have rejected me, but they'll come back as they watch our relationship. So God had set Himself a special covenant with Abraham, and through his seed would come forth a generation and a nation that would reach all the other nations of the world. And that brings us closer and closer to where we are today, because from Abraham he had his son of promise in Isaac. From Isaac there was Jacob, who had his name changed to Israel. And from Israel came the 12 tribes, the 12 sons of Israel that were taken by Joseph into the land of Egypt. And as time went by, Egypt's feelings towards Israelites soured, and they became captives and slaves. So that catches us up to Exodus chapter 1. Now, what I want you to understand is that Exodus is meant to be a chapter in the book of the Pentateuch. In fact, if we could back up one slide, I want to show you something real quick here. There's a little Hebrew character that you see there. It's called Wow, which makes it the most exciting letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And what you need to understand is that letter means and. It actually starts off the book of Exodus and. It's a continuation. It's not meant to stand by itself. But its contribution, again, is the deliverance from Egypt. Now, this is what I want to tell you real quick before we start, is that God could have talked about creation and the journey to the promised land in just a few verses and got right to the promised land, right to the good stuff. Humanity messed up, I fixed the mess, and I led them to the promised land. But He took 5 books to do that. And what that tells me is that to God, it's not just all about the promised land. It's about the journey there. He wants to reveal Himself to us and teach us about Himself. He wants us to know His character and His love for us, His sovereignty, His control and command as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He has much to teach us about the journey. We mess up terribly as Christians when all we focus on is the promised land. That promise is there to bring us joy, but there is a job to do now. There is much to learn about God now. He has much to teach us and reveal about Himself now on the journey. So don't take your salvation ticket, stick it in your back pocket, and say, I'm good, I'm going to heaven, back to life as normal. That's not the design. In fact, if that's your approach, I'm afraid you've missed it entirely. That is not how Christ saves us and changes us and transforms us. So there is a journey to discover here, and I want to take you on that. And we're going to cover 2 chapters this morning. Don't let that intimidate you. This is a narrative. Okay, if we were studying an epistle, we would not take 2 chapters at a time. But in a narrative, it's talking about a historical account where the main character is God. Always, in every narrative of the Bible, the main character is God. It's not Moses, Egypt, Pharaoh, or any of those guys. It's God. We're here to learn about God, and God is revealing himself in this narrative. So we're gonna travel quickly through these 2 chapters, but hold on, it's going to be a really fun story. You're going to like this. So chapter 1, verse 1. The tribes of Israel multiply. These are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob, each with his household. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. All the descendants of Jacob were 70 persons. Joseph was already in Egypt. Then Joseph died, and all his brothers, and all that generation. But the people of Israel were fruitful and increased greatly. They multiplied and grew exceedingly strong, so that the land was filled with them. 2 words I want you to underline in your Bible, if you would. Fruitful and multiply. We need to get that. What was happening with God's nation in Egypt? Exactly what he commanded them to do. He wanted them to be fruitful and multiply, and they were doing just that. And we're going to see something happen here. Pharaoh is going to pick a fight with God, because he's going to take charge of the same group of people and say, no more fruitfulness, no more multiplying. You're getting too big. Stand down. I'm going to make you stop growing. But God has commanded them to grow. So now we have 2 authorities claiming to be God, telling the nation of Israel what to do. And God's going to win that fight. These are his people. And I want you to understand, as they are being fruitful and multiply, just real quick, when we talk about the tribes of Israel, for some of you Bible nerds out there, I want to fix something straight for you that I struggled with for a while because I always got confused here. You've got the 12 tribes of Jacob, the 12 sons of Jacob. You got Reuben. I'm not going to do very good here, am I? I got 1. Simeon, thank you. You got Judah, you've got Levi, you've got Gad, Naphtali, Asher, Dan, Zebulun, thank you, Issachar, and you got Joseph and Benjamin. Now here's where it gets confusing, because all the times you read about them, how many times do you read about the tribe of Joseph? No, you never hear about the tribe of Joseph. When you read about it, you hear about Ephraim and Manasseh. And now those were Joseph's 2 sons who got a double portion of the land. But now we have a problem, because that makes 13 tribes. And I never hear about the 13 tribes of Israel, the 12 tribes. So what happened here? What happened is that when they took the promised land, Moses did not grant land to the tribe of Levi. They were the priests. Their portion was the burnt offerings, the food that Israel brought to the Lord. And they lived off of that, and they maintained the temple and the tabernacle, and they took care of those forms of duties, and they were not given land. But to Jacob, a double inheritance was given. So he had both Manasseh and Ephraim in the land. So there's still only 12 tribes of Israel, but 1 tribe got a double portion of land, and 1 tribe did not get any land. You got that? All right, some of you nodding your head, some of you, all right, we're hanging on anyway. So these tribes are now in Egypt, and they are being fruitful and multiplying as God has told his people to do. Now here comes the problem. Pharaoh doesn't want them to do that anymore. So let's continue the story. And this is the issue in verses 8 through 10. Now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, behold, the people of Israel are too many and too mighty for us. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply. Here, Pharaoh, he doesn't want them to do it anymore. And if war breaks out, they join our enemies and fight against us and escape from the land. So here is Pharaoh's concern. They're getting so big and so strong that if we were attacked by another nation, and the Israelites joined them, we're in trouble. We can't fight that off. So we have to weaken this nation so they're not a threat to us. In fact, if we did get attacked by another nation, we might get weakened to the point that they just leave. Can't let that happen. So Pharaoh comes up with 3 schemes, each one getting worse and worse to stop the fruitfulness and the multiplication. So here he starts out in verse 11. This is scheme number 1. Therefore they set taskmasters over them to afflict them with heavy burdens. They built for Pharaoh store cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied. I'm going to stop right there. Okay, Pharaoh was putting such oppression on them that their bodies would be so weakened and poorly conditioned that they would not be healthy enough as a nation to continue to grow and multiply as they had been doing. So the burden becomes great, oppressive. They're building cities for Pharaoh. This is brutal stuff, being pushed beyond the natural limits of humanity, being abused terribly. But this is what happens that I want you to see. Pharaoh pushes God's people, and God pushes Pharaoh back. Because the more he did that, the more fruitful the nation of Israel becomes. The more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied. That's not the natural order. That's not how that normally happens. And the more they spread abroad, and the Egyptians were in dread of the people of Israel. Verse 13, so they ruthlessly, let me try that again. They ruthlessly made the people of Israel work as slaves and made their lives bitter with hard service in mortar and brick and in all kinds of work in the field. And all their work they ruthlessly made them work as slaves. So here's what happens. The more they multiply, the harder they're getting on this nation. This is a horrible time to be a Hebrew. This is terrible. But it's not working. The more Pharaoh does this, the more they're multiplying. So he comes up with scheme number 2 and commands the midwives to kill the baby boys. Listen in verse 15. Then the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other Puah, when you serve as midwife to the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stool, if it is a son, you shall kill him. But if it's a daughter, she shall live. Verse 17, but the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them. They feared God. They hated evil. They weren't going to do this. They introduced a little civil disobedience here. Not going to happen. We're going to obey God rather than men. So they let the male children live. Verse 18, so the king of Egypt called the midwives and said to them, why have you done this and let the male children live? The midwives said to Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before the midwife comes to them. They might have stretched that one a little bit. Verse 20, so God dealt with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very strong. So God deals well with these midwives. Listen to what he does. As they feared God, he gave them families. The very thing that Pharaoh is trying to stop with the midwives, he even multiplies their families. So finally, Pharaoh gives up and says, I need a new tactic. And this one is the most brutal of all. It's the Nile strategy here in verse 22. Pharaoh commanded all his people, everyone in the land, every single Egyptian, every son is born to the Hebrews, you shall cast into the Nile, but you shall let the daughters live. Can you imagine? Now everyone has the authority in the land. Not just the authority, but the responsibility, the command, that if they see a Hebrew infant boy, it goes in the Nile. Now, we can read that, but could you actually put yourself in that position? Can you imagine some of you young mothers in here, if you feared for your infant's life, because if someone saw that, they would take them by one of its limbs and they would throw it into the river for it to drown. Can you even, I can't wrap my mind around it. I got a little 9-month-old, and I can't imagine what my heart would be feeling if I was thinking this whole community was hunting him down and they were going to go throw him in the Clarion River if they could find him. It'd be awful. But that's what Pharaoh commanded throughout all the land. So we can see that Pharaoh is pushing back against God, and he and God are in a bit of a fight right now. And that's not a fight you want to be entangled in. I would make a note here, church, that nowhere in history do we ever see a nation who kills babies for any reason, whether it be sacrifice, population control, convenience, whatever the issue be. We will never see a nation be on the same side as God when that's going on. And we're in trouble here in America because we're doing this on an unprecedented scale. And it has become culturally acceptable. Now this can become a hot topic because we've made it a political topic. It is not a political topic. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent in here. It makes no difference. God has instilled life and His image into the creation of man. At conception, there is a miracle that takes place where God stamps His image on that. And we're not in a place where we can snuff that out. Now, we need to make sure that we set the example as followers of Christ, and we do not partake in that. Even if our country says that's okay to do, God has not given us that permission as followers of Christ. But we must set that example. We've got to be a light in a dark place. And I would also say that if it's too late, maybe that's part of your journey. That's part of your past. You know, a part of the beauty of following God is there is no sin that stretches beyond His grace. And Jesus on that cross will take the sins of the killing of babies and infants throughout all generations upon Himself. He will take that penalty upon Himself. He is big enough, His shoulders are broad enough that He will take that, the guilt and the shame, all that comes with it. God does not restrict us from His family because of something like that. But at the same time, we are called to forsake that, to repent of it, to confess it, and never go back, to live a life forward that points to life, to preserve those who cannot speak for themselves. We are to have a voice for those who cannot speak up for themselves. And church, I'm not speaking from some political platform up here. This is the heart of God. Life is a serious thing and a precious thing. He has told us to be fruitful and multiply. We must heed the command of the Lord and respect life as He has created it. So this command has gone out, and there is great danger now for all infants. And we're going to be introduced to the life of Moses in chapter 2. So let's read the first 10 verses and see how the future deliverer of Israel is now going to be delivered himself. Now a man from the house of Levi went and took his wife, a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she took for him a basket made of bulrushes and daubed it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child in it and placed it among the reeds by the river bank. And his sister, which will be told as Miriam, stood at a distance to know what would be done to him. So I want you to just pause for a moment and think of the position this Hebrew mom and dad are in. They have a little baby boy. He's beautiful. He's precious. They can see so much potential in this little boy. So they hide him. But you can only hide an infant for so long before they start getting louder and they're moving around, and you can't just make them be quiet. So they knew that their time was running out before someone would catch them and come in and take him from them and throw him in the Nile, and they just didn't know what to do. So out of desperation, they make this little basket, and they put their infant in it, and they go put it in the reeds in the Nile so that he just doesn't go floating down into oblivion. And then they have his sister watch him from a distance, and I can only imagine as they're praying back at their home, God, please have mercy on us. Do something. Deliver him. Don't let him succumb to the Nile. Verse 5, so this is what happens. Now the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river. While her young woman walked beside the river, she saw the basket among the reeds and sent her servant woman, and she took it. When she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby was crying. She took pity on him and said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. So we have the daughter of Pharaoh. That's a princess. Comes down to the Nile to bathe, sees the basket, no doubt hears the crying inside, sends one of her servants over there to go see, what in the world is this? The servant girl brings it back, opens it up. Here's a little baby Hebrew, and the princess has compassion, shows pity. Well, this is a Hebrew child. What are we going to do with this? Verse 7, All right, little Moses' sister, Miriam, chimes in at this point. She's been watching. Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go call you a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." So the girl went and called the child's mother. Well done, Miriam. Did you catch what just happened? She saw Pharaoh's daughter pick this up and start oohing and eyeing over the infant. She makes her presence known. Hey, you found a Hebrew child. You need someone to nurse that, don't you? You want me to help find someone? Yes, can you do that? Sure. Runs home to mom. Mom, Pharaoh's daughter's looking for someone to nurse the infant we just put out there. Up for the task? Absolutely. So verse 9, you can see God's hand in this. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you wages." Well, this is just getting better and better. So the woman, the mother, took the child and nursed him. When the child grew older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses. Pharaoh's daughter named him Moses because she said, "I drew him out of the water." Moses means to draw out. Has that idea of delivery, as a deliverer. So let's continue the story here. Now, this is where Moses now grows up. He's been delivered. He's been preserved. Now he's growing up in the very gates of Pharaoh's house. And he's a grown man now. So let's catch ourselves up to this. Verse 11, one day when Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and looked on their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his people. He looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian and hit him in the sand. Verse 13, when he went out the next day, behold, 2 Hebrews were struggling together. And he said to the man in the wrong, "Why do you strike your companion?" Verse 14, he answered, "Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, surely the thing is known. So Moses grows up. He's a man now. Surely he has watched the oppression and burden of his people. Surely he's conflicted inside as he is part of the Egyptian family now, but watching this, he has a heart for his people. One day he goes out, he sees an Egyptian just mercilessly beating a Hebrew, one of his own, and he can't take it anymore, and he snaps. And he goes out and he kills that Egyptian. And he buries him in the sand, hoping that no one will find him. But someone does find him. Because the very next day when he goes out and he sees 2 Hebrews fighting, and Moses says, "Guys, break it up. Don't we have enough oppression going on? Why do we have to beat on each other?" And one of them speaks up and says, "Why, are you going to kill us too?" And Moses says, "Uh-oh, my secret's out. Someone knows." And if this is known, I don't know what his relationship with Pharaoh was like, but he knew that this would push it beyond its limits. No Hebrew was permitted to kill an Egyptian. And we're going to see that in the story, verse 15. When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and stayed in the land of Midian. The land of Midian has a little bit of history. It was the Midianites who actually took Joseph away as a slave and brought him to Egypt. Now it is in the land of Midian that Moses is finding refuge. It's a land about 175 miles north to south. It's got Edom up at the top. And it's got a few places in the Bible that we'll see it. We'll see the Midians and the Moabites one day. They'll hire a prophet named Balaam to curse Israel. It will be unsuccessful. In Numbers 25, we'll see the Midianites cause Israel to stumble by introducing to them Baal worship. And there's great consequences to that. And ultimately, God comes before a judge named Gideon, a cowardly man, who becomes a mighty man of valor, and it is he who destroys the Midianites completely from the face of the earth. So that's the story of the Midianites, and Moses finds himself right now seeking refuge in this camp of Midian. And he sits down by a well. Verse 16, now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. And they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. The shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and saved them and watered their flock. Verse 18, when they came home to their father Reuel, that he said, "How is it that you have come home so soon today?" They said, "An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds and even drew water for us and watered the flock." Verse 20, he said to his daughters, "Where is he? Why have you left the man? Call him that he may eat bread. And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah. She gave birth to a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, I have been a sojourner in a foreign land. Gershom means banishment. So this is Moses' story. You know, I was the son of a princess in the land of Egypt. My people were oppressed. I made some bad decisions. I let my temper get ahead of me, and now I am banished from the land, and he is taking refuge in this place called Midian. Okay? So this is everything that Moses has dealt with up to this point. We're going to end here with just pointing out a few principles we can learn from this story. Let me read the following verses, starting with verse 23. During those many days, the king of Egypt died. So back home on the ranch, while all this is happening, the king of Egypt now, Pharaoh, has died. And the people of Israel groaned because of their slavery and cried out for help. They cry for rescue from slavery. It came up to God, and God heard their groaning. And God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. God saw the people of Israel, and God knew. This was all part of the plan. God is not out of control. So here's what I want to do to finish today. I want to give you 6 lenses for us to look through to see the presence of God in difficult times. I was just picking on Mandy yesterday. She lost her glasses for some reason. I've got the humor of a 5-year-old, and whenever I see someone who wears glasses looking for their glasses, it makes me laugh because you need your glasses to see. Well, that's exactly what we're talking about today. You need certain spiritual glasses on to understand God is with us in our hardest times. So lens number 1 that we need to look through, God hears our cries. God hears our cries. He delivers his people. I wonder, each of you sitting in your seat here this morning, what your heart's cry is. What deep down, that when God sees into you, he sees that burden. What is that? Is it a cry for deliverance from a situation? What are your circumstances that you are facing? What is your heart's cry? I want you to know this, that it is promised, it is assured, it is a known fact. God hears it. He is aware of it. He knows it. God hears the cries of his people. So be assured of that. Lens number 2, God is working out a plan that is far larger than ourselves. We need to understand this. There's a lot of garbage being preached out there today. You can turn on TV evangelists. Some of them are great. Some of them are horrible. But do not be convinced. Do not ever let someone talk to you and convince you that the point of the gospel is you. You will be sorely disappointed. That the point of the gospel is God is just looking for someone he can make filthy rich. If only they'll come to him. That is not the gospel. We are called to something much greater than ourselves. We are called to lay down our lives and make much of Christ. There is a plan and a purpose in play, and God invites us to play a small part of that through our obedience to him. And he can use us to accomplish great and mighty things if we are surrendered wholly to him and filled with his Spirit, guided by him, directed by him. His eyes look and range through the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are in that condition. But it's not about us. And if you make it about you, if I make it about me, we're going to become so disenchanted with God. God, I came to you and look at my problems now. Where are you? What's going on? Why is life like this? If you love me, why are you letting this happen to me? Me. It's not about us. We're part of a much greater plan. Let me read to you Genesis 45, verse 8. I'm just going to do this very quickly. I want you to think of this from Joseph's perspective. He's been hauled off as a slave, sold into Egypt. What is he to make of this? Verse 8 of Genesis 45, so it was not you who sent me here, Joseph says, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and ruler over the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, thus says the Lord, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me and don't tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen. You shall be, and you shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children and your flocks, your herds, and all that you have. There I will provide for you, for there are yet 5 years of famine to come, so that you and your household and all that you have do not come to poverty. Joseph was sold into slavery, but now is like a father to Pharaoh, running the country. And now he has the means to provide for the nation of Israel, as small as it was, so that they were not extinguished by the great famine that was coming. God had a plan, a preservation for his people through this. I'll skip ahead to Genesis 46, verse 1. So Israel, or Jacob, took his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. And God spoke to Israel in visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you up again. This was all part of the plan. God saw this happening to the nation of Israel before they even got there. God said, I'm going to bring you there. I'm going to preserve you through the drought and the famine. I'm going to make a great nation out of you under the protection of Egypt, and then I'm going to lead you out of there. But they had forgotten about this, and now they felt abandoned by God. Where is He? We are part of something much greater than ourselves. We must allow God to use us in such a way, and we can't make it all about ourselves. Lens number 3, God's people are never alone. Sometimes we look at suffering, pain, and injustice in our lives, and we think those are markers of God's absence. If God was here, this would not be happening to me. That's really bad theology, church. Because it is Jesus who said in John 16:33, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. It is God who tells us during the hardest times that we will face, I will never leave you or forsake you. I'm going to be there during the hard times. There will be hard times. And in the hard times, we want immediate deliverance. I know I do. I want that microwave delivery. Lord, I'm hurting now. Deliverance now. Quickly. I'm uncomfortable. I don't like this. Change my situation. Change my circumstances. Do you know when Israel will be delivered in Exodus? It's not chapter 3. It's not chapter 10. Chapter 14, they get to the Red Sea. It takes time. Deliverance takes time. We need to be able to wait upon the Lord, to hope in Him. And during those times, it's important because sometimes suffering is a necessary component of God's plan. It was for the Israelites in Egypt. He had to harbor them there and incubate them while they grow and multiply. But it was hard for them. There was pain and suffering in the process. God knew that. That's the last words in this chapter, chapter 2. God knew. He knew what was going on. This was part of the plan. He was going to deliver them from this, but there had to be some endurance in here. So during this time, no doubt they were asking, where is God? He's let us down. How could He let this happen? We are so oppressed. We're crying out to God and nothing's happening. He has forgotten about us. What we are meant to understand from these first 2 chapters in Exodus is that is not the case. When you find yourself in that place and you are asking, where is God? Has He abandoned me? How could He let this happen? We have to put these lenses on, church. We've got to understand, well, it's not all about me, and God has not left us, and He has heard my cry, and I'm part of something much larger than myself, so I'm to apply faith and trust in the God because I know His character is good, and there's a reason for this, and He's going to carry me through this. We've got to see Him that way, or we may abandon Him. We may say, God, I thought my life was going to be a lot easier than this. I didn't think you were going to let this kind of stuff happen to me. I've got questions that you're not answering. I'm going somewhere else. Christians don't take that path. There are a lot of disenchanted Christians out there who used to be a professing Christian who now reject everything because life got hard and they didn't put these lenses on. They thought that having Christ in their hearts meant that there would be no trials. There would be no suffering. There would be no pain or hard times. We can't allow ourselves to believe that. God will be there in the midst of our pain, and He will provide delivery in His time. Lens number 4. I'm going to move through these quickly. God rewards faithfulness, so we can't sweat the small stuff that He asks us to forsake. There's going to be stuff along the path where God says, you need to leave that behind. You need to give that away. I'm going to ask you to leave this here. And we can't sweat that when God tells us to do this, because we know that He rewards faithfulness, just as we saw with the Hebrew midwives. And as we obey Him, He is going to bless us. Lens number 5, God wins. Let's not forget that, okay? Proverbs 21:30, we read at the very beginning. There is no plan that succeeds against the Lord. In the end, He is going to win. So analyze your life this morning. Is there any area of disobedience in your life that you are allowing to remain there? Because that area is not going to prosper you. You've convinced yourself in your mind, God says don't do this, but I am going to do this because I think there's an exception in my case. No, there's not. There's no plan that succeeds against the Lord. It will bite you. Sin's design is to destroy you, and it will. By design, it will bring you down. God is trying to save you from the consequences of sin, but if we ignore Him, we will experience the damaging results of chasing after sin. Don't do it. God knows how this stuff works out. He wins every time. Don't go against Him. As one of my former pastors says, don't box with God. Your arms are too short. And finally, the last lens that we need to look through is God knows you intimately. You know, I don't want to leave you feeling here this morning that you're part of something so huge that you get lost in the mix of it all. No. God still sees you as an individual right where you are. He hears your cry. He knows your burden. He knows you by the hair on your head, the thumbprint on your thumb. He knows you so intimately. This is what the description of salvation is. John 17:3 says, this is eternal life, that you may know Him and Jesus Christ, whom He has sent. That's an intimate knowledge, not just know of God, but you know Him in a very personal way, in a way where He has delivered you from your sin, saved you from the penalty of your sin, washed you clean, and filled you with hope and a purpose. So we are meant to know God intimately, and Jesus turns it around in Matthew 7:23, and He says, he's at the day of judgment here, and He's looking at people and says, hey, I don't know you, I never knew you, depart from me, you worker of iniquity. It's all based on whether we know each other or not. Do you know God? Does He know you intimately? In a way, and I'm going to back up to the very beginning, to the Tower of Babel, because this is where we come in. God disinherited the nations. We got thrown out. We are the Gentiles. We are not the Jewish nation that are part of the people of God. But through Jesus Christ, someone who came through the tribe of Judah, He has opened a door so those nations who were disinherited can now come back into the kingdom and the life and the family of God. Just as God said when He talked to Abram, and He said, through you I will bring and bless the nations back to me. Now through Jesus Christ, as we're standing on the outside, we're invited to come in and be part of God's family because of what He accomplished on the cross. You only get there through Jesus Christ. You only get there when you surrender your life to Him, when you call upon Him to be your Lord and your Savior, when you confess your sins to Him, and God washes you clean through the blood of Christ, when He bears your penalty on the cross and your sin is forgiven forever. We're brought back in to God through the blessing that's being worked out here in the deliverance of Israel and Egypt. Isn't it a marvelous picture? And it is so relevant to us today, even where we sit, because God plans to bring us back into His family, you into His family, but it has to be through Jesus Christ. Christians, I would speak to you here for a moment as well. Are you going through a difficult time? Does it feel like God has forsaken you and abandoned you? Things just couldn't get any harder. Why has God let this happen? Some crisis has unfolded in your life and you're asking the whys and there's no answer. Make sure you put these lenses on that we spoke about this morning. Make sure that you look at God through a biblical context because He is going to reveal His character to you. He is going to show Himself faithful and strong to you. But we've got to take Him as who He is, how He has revealed Himself in Scripture. These things that were written in times of old were written to us for our example and for our instruction. God is revealing his character to us through the book of Exodus. I am out of time for this morning. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father, right now, as we bow our heads and close our eyes, we just focus on you and what we've heard from you this morning. It's an exciting plan that we're watching unfold here, way back in the time of Egypt and the Exodus. But it has everything to do with where we sit right now. You are a God who delivers and preserves. Father, I pray right now as we search our hearts that we would search our hearts in such a way to see if your Spirit is resonating with our spirit, that if your Spirit is testifying with our spirit, that we are saved, that we are part of your family. But Father, if there are hearts here this morning who are still outside the kingdom walls and you are inviting them in, Father, would you just allow that conviction to lay heavy on their hearts so their eyes would be opened for their need for Jesus Christ, their need for their sins to be forgiven. And Father, would you just lavish your love upon them, that they would see how much you want them to be a part of your family. Father, the lengths you have gone so that we would have this choice before us are unimaginable. You paid the highest price, which reveals your love for us is greater than we could ever comprehend. And right now you hold your arms open that whoever would come, whoever would call upon the name of the Lord, could begin that journey with you. A journey that you'll take us to the promised land, where one day you'll wipe away every tear and you'll make all things right. But it begins with our relationship with Jesus Christ.